38 and 45 would not have an effect or impact the agreements going forward. But that's very questionable, because within the agreements lies a clause that determines which laws apply depending on the province or the territory that you live in. There's been injustice right from day one. And when we come together in this fashion, rest assured, the dominant society and the media will play it off as rogue bands, as Saddle Lake has been identified as such back when we decided not to enter into agreements. There has to be a real demonstration on the part of the federal government to come to the table and have the people that sit at this table involved in the design and implementation of these agreements. No more unilateralism. It has to stop. Thank you.
Chief Larry Kashane, Yellow Quill First Nation.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. First of all, I'd like to thank the chiefs involved for setting up the conference today to let people know what's going on in our communities, the underfunding that we see, and then that's at the whim of our Department of Indian Affairs, where they decide that, well, we need new contribution agreements, and those contribution agreements usually mean less funding for our communities. You have responsibilities falling on our table that are added. You have programs like the Active Measures program that's coming back to our community, where we're training our youth, 18 to 24-year-olds. We take a cut in our funding in the Active Measures program, and they want us to do more with less. And that's what the funding agreements do usually. The agreements are usually last minute. We get word 2 weeks from the time that new monies are going to come out. Well, you have to sign your funding agreement. And those are, we're never given enough time to review our funding agreements. And a lot of the times the policies that are being developed aren't developed yet. So we'll know in May or June what the policies are that are driving the cuts, and the new policies on funding are known to the First Nations until months after they've signed, or months after the April 1 has come and gone. So it's always an unknown. They're asking us to sign documents that we're not aware of all of the details on it, so it's not fair for our communities to be signing funding agreements when there's too many unknowns for our communities and the burdens that are there. You know, taxpayers talk about First Nations people getting all this money. I know in my community I have 2,800 band members, and we have a budget that's set, and it gets smaller every year. If we were to take the actual cost, our post-secondary, we spend $1 million in post-secondary. That's off of the budget line already. We spend probably close to $2 million in teacher salaries, so you take that off. Now you're left with half a budget. You divide that by 2,800 members, and that's a little over $1,200 per member. If we're gonna take those costs and try to run a government and to try and provide services to 2,800 people, that's not a lot of money. So I'd like to be, I guess, mention that I am from the Treaty 4 territory, and that we have Chief Mike Kuchikam that's battling the government now by not signing. My purpose and intent here is to come and show my support to the communities that are not willing to sign. So thank you for the opportunity to come and speak, and I think we need to let the Canadian public know what's going on, who is accountable to their communities. Chief Fox talked about our meetings, our yearly meetings, presenting our audits to our members. We've done that for the last 6 years at Yellow Quill, where we have a band meeting, we present our finances, and we let the band membership know exactly what's happened the year before. So, and we've yet to see anything come out of the government here in Canada that shows that they are being responsible, what kind of deals are being made, and at what expense. You know, you take the things happening in New Brunswick and the dangers that are tied to activity there, and it's in the name of taking resources out of the ground, so at whose expense? First Nations and the Canadian general public. So I think Harper needs to define what accountability means to his government, not only to the First Nations, so thank you.
Chief Jeremy Forehorns, Pipeline.
And just for information purposes, Pipot is in Treaty 4 territory. And our community and council have ongoing frustration with the current funding, the current contribution agreement that we have been offered. And because of the same reasons, there are a lot of questions that we asked, that we have, and the Department of Indian Affairs, which is now known as Aboriginal Affairs, couldn't give us the answers. So on numerous times, we had asked to meet with the decision makers of these agreements, because the funding services officer, even the regional director general, cannot make decisions when it comes to changing these agreements. So we need to build a relationship, because we need to stop pretending that we have a working relationship with the Department of Indian Affairs and or the federal government of Canada. The current direction that we're all headed towards doesn't lead to a constructive future. 1 year ago today in Treaty 4 territory, we had one community that had issue with the contribution agreement and made that decision not to sign it. And now you look here today, and there are more. And it's only going to continue to grow in numbers as we move forward. One of the challenges that a lot of other communities have is access to financial resources. If more communities had their own financial resources that were ready available, then you would see more communities sitting here, and we would need a bigger room. Because, as I said, these contribution funding agreements, they're not agreements, they're one-sided proposals. And no changes can be made to the proposals. And we're never given any reason as to why. We're always there, we're open to that dialogue and that discussion. How can we improve things? But when you're told that these things are gonna change, but we can't tell you how they're gonna change, we don't know what that's gonna look like, because we haven't heard from headquarters in Ottawa, so we don't have any idea what that's gonna be. It's frustrating. It's just a very frustrating process. And going forward, as we try to plan the long-term planning of our community in Pipot, it's gonna get harder and harder, because Pipot as well has 2,300 members. And we try to be accountable to them all, because we have our budget meetings as well, we have our audit presentations, and we jump through all the hoops that the department and that the federal government of Canada requires us to. And when we ask a simple question of how can we improve things going forward, we're never given an answer. It's never a simple answer. So for us, it's very frustrating, the amount of funding that we received cuts to this year. And we put our own resources to fill those gaps.